Shout out to David Moss, as he's been getting some nice footage of the Tesla Semi at the ACT Expo in Vegas this week. For the UI of the Tesla Semi, you'll see the deck lights, side storage, the hood, showing the vitals for the tires, and of course controls for the charge port. Scroll up a bit and you'll see tire pressure information. And in this shot, you can see not only the PSI for each tire, but the temperature of each tire as well. I think it would be awesome to have a video walking through all of the different UI features of the Tesla Semi, because clearly looking at the setup for these controls on the left, it's certainly different than what we're used to. But David did have a short video where he started pressing some of the buttons of the Tesla Semi UI, and the Tesla representative effectively asked him to stop. The cameras look crystal clear, as you would expect. Everything seems to be super snappy. And of course, the Tesla representative just didn't want any random person changing any of the settings for this Tesla Semi. He also shared an up-close look of the Tesla Semi Megacharger and the handle, disconnecting it from the actual stall. And I think this video does a great job of showcasing the scale of the Megacharger and the stall itself relative to the people standing right next to it. And if you thought the Cybertruck had the biggest and baddest wiper blade in the game, well, maybe not so fast. The Tesla Semi might have something to say about that one. And in what should be a surprise to no one, the orders for the Tesla Semi are now pouring in. Watt EV announced 370 Tesla Semis will be added to its fleet over time. And these Tesla Semis will be deployed across California. Deliveries are expected to begin with 50 trucks this year, with the full fleet operational by the end of next year. And more than 300 will be deployed under a joint program with the Port of Oakland. The deployment will be supported by a growing network of megawatt-class charging depots, including initial sites at the Port of Oakland and Fresno, with additional locations planned in Stockton and Sacramento. And further, Watt EV has 15 additional sites under development as it moves toward a broader statewide and eventual nationwide network. And here's the Watt EV Tesla Semi, one we've seen out on the road before. And as we know, that's not the only new order to come in as of late. So I've been vibe coding this new dashboard to track not only Tesla Semi orders, but also the status of the charging depots nationwide. I will share access to this dashboard in the coming days, so all of you can bookmark it and reference it whenever you'd like. And anytime you see any Tesla Semi news where I'll need to update the tracker, be sure to tag me on X or leave a comment here, or of course you can always shoot me an email. Ideally, we would crowdsource this information so we have the most accurate tracker out there. I don't have time to run through all of the features today. Sadly, this is one of the busiest weeks for me in recent memory. But for today, for the Megacharger Depot network, you can select all or just those that are currently operational. So you can see those are all in California at the moment. You can see those under construction in yellow. And the last option is all of the planned Megacharger locations. And yes, when you click on any of these locations, you'll get more information, and then you can go direct to the source. And then at the bottom is where you will find the most recent Tesla Semi orders. We have the Watt EV order, another one from NICA, the Big F Transport we just covered recently, and you'll have the date it was announced, a bit more supporting information and context, and once again, you'll be able to click directly on the source. And then you'll see the rest. Some are just pilot testing, others are partially delivered, and so on. And again, once I make this live, I would love to have you guys look it over, point out any errors, any mistakes, any sources that aren't working properly, so we can get this cleaned up and have it as accurate as possible. And then as we get news of new orders, I'll be able to update this quickly and it'll refresh automatically. And there will be a search feature. So for example, if I type here and go Watt EV, you'll see they have 2 orders and 1 charging depot. Then you can scroll down a bit and it will select only those confirmed orders and reservations. And one more, if I were to search for Pepsi, you'll see 1 order and 5 different depots. Then you can scroll down and see the order for only Pepsi. So just know, guys, I'm working on a lot of stuff behind the scenes. In the weeks to come, I'll be able to share more and more, but I do want Electrified to be as valuable as possible. And truly, I love this stuff and getting to share all of it with you guys. And because I know a few of you will be wondering, I did vibe code that with Perplexity Computer. And of course, right now it's pretty simple, but I will make it live sometime in the next week or two, and I'll continue to build build it out. And as I said on X, the Tesla Semi is going to be nothing like the Cybertruck when it comes to sales relative to expectations. The Cybertruck so far has let us down quite significantly, but the Tesla Semi is going to be the opposite. I firmly expect Tesla's order backlog for the Tesla Semi to develop very quickly, especially once word spreads about the TCO. But further, I think there's a part of the Tesla Semi storyline that's being very much overlooked, and it's actually the structure of the company Watt EV itself. What Watt EV actually does is provide turnkey solutions to help actual fleet operators electrify their fleets. So not only does Watt EV build out these charging depots using Tesla's hardware and the megawatt charging standard, as we just saw, they have 6 of their own Class 8 charging depots, with expansion underway. But Watt EV's flagship model is a truck as a service. So Watt EV's customers get these electric semis with everything else needed to electrify their own fleets. And it's all rolled up into one simple monthly subscription. So the truck, access to those charging depots, all of the maintenance, all telematics, operational support, and so on in one easy to understand pricing model. And part of why this is such a big deal is because it eliminates that major upfront cost for some of these fleets looking to electrify. While we know it's largely a no-brainer from a TCO perspective over the life of the vehicle, for companies that want to replace their fleets, it can still be a significant upfront cost. But with companies like Watt EV and others, they're eliminating that concern altogether. And then for fleets that already have their own electric trucks, they can subscribe to Watt EV's monthly charging depots on a separate subscription. So if they don't want to buy or lease these trucks from Watt EV, they can still access the charging depots. And yes, Watt EV does actually operate its own fleet network, so they will likely use some of these Tesla semis for their own purposes. But its overarching goal is to make zero-emission trucking a thing for everyone. And we have to think about this from a logical perspective. Plenty of companies would love to electrify their fleets, but they likely don't know how to go about it. They would have plenty of questions about charging and setting up their own infrastructure, and they likely have questions about maintenance and everything, but companies like Watt EV take that all off the table. So Watt EV is really like an electric truck leasing company, while they do have some of their own operations as well. And again, not only that, but they're really a full service provider for everything these companies will need to electrify their fleets and operate them on an ongoing basis. So for all these companies that don't have tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars to electrify its fleet and buy these trucks up front to build out their own charging depots, Watt EV takes care of that. So this model that Watt EV encapsulates really wipes out some of the biggest challenges to the Tesla Semi actually scaling. It can be capital intensive. There is plenty of infrastructure risk, again, for those that don't really know what they're doing. And there are plenty of operational unknowns when it comes to things like maintenance, service, and so on. And this model from companies like Watt EV and Alioth or Volvo On Demand, they're doing similar things and addressing all of these constraints. So the big players will likely continue to buy direct, the Amazons, Walmarts, FedExes, and so on. But for a lot of the smaller players that want to electrify, this is a great way to do so. And frankly, I rarely see anybody talk about this business model. I think a lot of people just think Watt EV is a company that has their own freight operations and they'll keep all of these semis in-house. But that's actually not the case. And this trucking as a service package, in my opinion, will be a critical accelerant for electric semi adoption. When it comes to supervised FSD across the EU, that May 5th TCMD meeting came and went. And as expected, there was no vote. The EU regulator sat through roughly an hour of demonstrations about FSD working well in European traffic, mixed weather, on the highway, and so on. But it's been reported that there were plenty of questions and pushback to the technology, once again, as we expected. Things like the cars occasionally going over the speed limit, concerns about wildlife, specifically moose in Nordic countries, icy roads, the name itself, FSD, and pressure from Tesla supporters contacting officials. Now, to be fair, some EU officials did express more positive views based on early observations. But all chatter aside, what's next? Well, the next meeting where there could be a vote is June 30th, and if there's no vote at that meeting, there's not another gathering until October. As we've said all along, there was going to be pushback. Some of it was likely to be valid, but some was likely to be either political or anti-competitive, wrapped up in a safety narrative. So again, the vote is going to be the fastest path for broader EU adoption, and the soonest we're going to have that is the end of June. Once again, roughly 15 of the 27 countries would have to vote in favor to have it pass. But even if that does not happen, individual countries can still choose to recognize the Dutch approval. And on that point, we have the Minister of Mobility in Belgium asking Tesla to transfer those files about supervised FSD to them. He said, "It's now with my administration, which I've instructed to provide clarity by the end of the week on a possible rapid homologation. You should not slow down innovation, but make it possible in a thoughtful and safe way. This way, we keep Flanders at the foremost as a forward-thinking region." So there you go. Some of the rule makers are indeed more in favor than others. As it stands now, hopefully we get somewhere between 3 to 5 countries deciding to go independently, meaning they will individually recognize the Dutch approval. Further than that, it's sounding like the rest of the EU countries will be waiting for the vote, whether it's in June or October. So for that widespread access to supervised FSD across the EU, I think the summer is pretty optimistic at this point. It's possible, but the vote would need to happen at the next meeting. And then even if it passes, there will likely still be some administrative work and regulatory hurdles before it's actually released to the fleet in each country. So what I'm about to say is strictly based on vibes, but to me, it feels like Q4 might be a more realistic timeline for a broader EU expansion of FSD. And we can't forget about the technically non-EU countries like Switzerland that have their own processes for approval, but are certainly following the story closely. As far as I can tell, Astra in Switzerland is comparable to the RDW in the Netherlands. And here's what their director said.
"I can only congratulate Tesla and the Netherlands for their courage to engage in level 2+ systems. The only thing that we are demanding is that these systems are to be denominated as such. They aren't level 3, they are level 2+. So the driver remains fully responsible. And if this is committed and communicated as such, no problem with that."
So for certain countries like Switzerland, it sounds like as long as Tesla is very clear about the limitations of the technology right now, it should have a straightforward path to adoption. And as mentioned, others were more positive. A regulator from Denmark said the vehicles did perform very well in the complex traffic of rush hour in Copenhagen. And Sweden's transport agency said the country is generally positive on automated driving tech as long as it follows regulations. So again, hopefully at least a few of these countries go the individual route and choose on their own to recognize the Dutch approval. And I still think countries like Germany will be dragging their feet as much as possible to protect their own. But based on where things stand now, I would not expect a broad EU rollout of FSD this summer like many were expecting. Unfortunately, what's going on with FSD in China has largely been a black box, but we do have this account that I cannot personally vouch for, saying Tesla's made a version of FSD with full functionality available to its employees in China, version 14.3.2. This info is for reference only. And separately, Ming said Tesla recently tweaked a small detail in its employee FSD trial policy in China. For staff driving AI-4 vehicles, a new clause was added. Violating the confidentiality policy carries a roughly $732,000 penalty. They added, take the reports about an internal release of full FSD 14 to Tesla's Chinese staff with a grain of salt for now. And it follows the reason Ming said we should take that other report with a grain of salt is because if that penalty is in place, then most likely these Tesla employees are not leaking or sharing anything with these anonymous sources. But very clearly, none of this is official. We have to remember on the Q1 call, Tesla said they're now expecting a broader approval of FSD in China in Q3 this year. And right now, it's not exactly clear what this limited approval Tesla has for FSD in China, but what is clear is it sounds like we'll be waiting at least another few months before Tesla gets that broader approval for FSD in China. But in the interim, it sounds like Tesla is doing what it can to accelerate this process and to gather data to remain and stay competitive in that market because the competition is quite strong. If you have time, I'd add this video to your list from Out of Spec testing a VW vehicle with Momenta's self-driving technology.
Wow, they need to put this car front and center at the the head office in Wolfsburg and force the entire group management team to drive it. This is one of the most impressive point-to-point drives I've ever had. Yeah, you did a great job with this car. You have one hell of a product on your hands. This is so cool. And I think you're going to shake up the entire Volkswagen group, perhaps the whole Western world with this car. I mean, we've got a Zeekr 9X heading straight for us right now, and it's just figuring out that we got to go. Now this guy's got to turn. We've got a thing to do. I'm not touching anything. I'll keep covering the wheel, but it's doing it all. I didn't do anything.
Tesla was also very smooth, but like very vastly different driving conditions. Like this was much more traffic, much more stuff the system has to focus on. So I am really, really impressed, and I can only hope that we will get this.
It just put in a ton of steering lock, and it's making this turn full turn.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, the turning radius is insane on this car.
Momenta is not a name we've talked about much on the channel because they are a Chinese first company, but they basically develop the AI software for autonomous vehicles. The company's been around for roughly a decade. It's still private, but they do have some bigger name investors like GM and Mercedes, Tencent. Clearly they're working in partnership with VW and others. So it's almost like if Tesla had a separate company just building the neural network for FSD, that's effectively what Momenta is. They also take a very data-driven approach, focusing on real-world data to create that flywheel. And wouldn't you know it, they're also taking the end-to-end neural net approach, meaning they have a unified model to handle all layers of the stack, from perception to planning and control. And primarily they'll have two different products. One is M-Pilot, which is focused on technically a level 2++ system. So of course it has many of the features that we know from FSD, but ultimately the driver is still responsible. And separately, Momenta has MSD, which is what they call Momenta Self-Driving. This is where they target full autonomy, level 3 and 4, and so they do target all aspects of this automated driving world. But one big distinction from Tesla: for both approaches, it is still choosing to use LiDAR. But their software is supposed to be system and chip agnostic. So Momenta's not making vehicles, it's not making hardware, it just supplies its software to these OEMs. And right now, there's likely over 50 different production models that have been delivered with this Momenta software. So we're talking hundreds of thousands of vehicles, many of which are in China using the software. Momenta also has a strategic partnership with Uber to launch in Europe. So all that to serve as a loud reminder that Tesla has plenty of competition for autonomy in the Chinese market. It's very different than what we see here in the United States. Now sure, there are plenty of Chinese companies working on autonomous driving that don't have advanced technology and shouldn't be deployed widely. One example where Huawei's NCA level 2 technology did actually hit a child. A Chinese citizen then called it out on social media, and Huawei's response, they said it wasn't a vehicle problem, and the person that shared the video was reported to the police and forced to sign a pledge promising not to spread negative news about Huawei again. And there have been reports that Chinese authorities are suppressing further discussion about the matter. So yes, it's a mixed bag over there in China, tough to get to the actual truth. But Momenta will be looking to scale across the EU with some bigger name legacy auto companies. So I wanted to put this segment in there as a name to watch moving forward. Tesla Australia pocketed its first revenue from Australia's new vehicle emission standards. Tesla earned $3 million from regulatory credits sold to legacy car makers that could not meet their targets under the new vehicle emission standards that came into force last year. There was no income from regulatory credits in previous years. And believe it or not, battery storage is a bigger revenue driver for Tesla in Australia than EVs. Back in 2023, Tesla's revenue from battery storage was 15%. Fast forward to last year, and that number is now 55%. This reflects the surging success of its storage business, and that's despite a substantial fall in battery prices over that time. $3 million might not seem like much right now, but these regulatory credits from Australia are likely to be around through 2030, and and they might grow over time. So even if Tesla's regulatory credits in North America do begin to dwindle, now simultaneously they're picking up in other countries around the world. And the main reason I say these credits will likely grow for Tesla is because the emissions targets, the requirements, actually tighten every year, meaning they get harder to achieve. So other companies are likely to continually need more credits unless they move quickly, which we know is really not a thing that Legacy Auto does. And not only that, but the first year of this program in 2025, there was a surplus of credits earned because the emissions requirements were looser, meaning they were easier to hit. So not as many companies needed credits from others. But as the requirements become more challenging, more of Tesla's competition will need those credits from Tesla. So far and away, the main story for Tesla in Australia is indeed battery storage, and this credit program does not cover that at all. This is strictly for vehicles, but it's certainly something to note. Today we learned Nuro has received approval to test Lucid Gravity robotaxis without a safety driver on California public roads. According to the California DMV, Nuro's existing driverless AV permit was modified to include the Lucid Gravity. Nuro has held a driverless permit in California for 6 years, but previously it only covered low-speed autonomous delivery vehicles. A Nuro spokesperson told the outlet the company expects to begin driverless testing later this year, but did not give more specifics. Nuro must still secure a driverless ride-hailing permit from the CPUC and a separate deployment permit from the DMV before Uber can offer the service to paying customers. For now, Nuro and Uber continue to test Lucid Gravity robotaxis in autonomous mode with a safety driver on board. Lucid said it remains on track for commercial robotaxi operations to start later this year, though it acknowledged the scope of the initial launch, including whether it will be fully driverless, will depend on the pace of regulatory approvals. So in short, Nuro can now test its fully autonomous system on Lucid Gravity vehicles without a driver. But this is just a clearance from the California DMV, meaning Nuro would still need 2 separate approvals, one from the CPUC and yet another one for the DMV covering commercial operations, meaning they can charge for paid rides. But if you saw my most recent video where we said Tesla has not yet applied for that CPUC permit, the one for a true AV passenger service, Nuro also does not yet have that specific permit that Tesla also has not yet applied for. So I know this can be a bit confusing because there are so many different permits, but the truth is Nuro is slightly ahead when it comes to the DMV approvals toward fully driverless operations, but neither Tesla nor Nuro actually have a true AV permit from the CPUC. And it is true that Nuro now has a driverless permit from the DMV side that Tesla does not yet have, but again, this one is just for testing. Holmar shared a post from S&P Global Mobility, which I believe might have been behind a paywall, but the takeaway for loyalty rates, February 2026, Tesla in number 1 at 61.1%. And here's the screenshot for verification, Tesla 61.1%. But the reason I'm sharing it is because less than 1 year ago, August of last year, we got all these headlines. This one from Reuters. Exclusive. Tesla's brand loyalty collapsed after Elon backed Trump, data shows. Fast forward to today, roughly 9 months later, and the headlines are now Tesla leads US brand loyalty again in 2026, beating Subaru, Toyota, and Ferrari. So the data says Tesla owners are choosing to return to a Tesla for their next vehicle purchase at a higher rate than any other brand. So listen, would that number be higher if Elon didn't engage in his political endeavors? Probably, but the data is still clear. Tesla makes incredible products that people enjoy. In a recent Tesla app updates decompile, they said this is a fantastic addition for long-term vehicle ownership and a massive win for the used EV market. These strings reveal Tesla's adding official documentation for one of the most critical components of the car, the high voltage battery. So it looks like Tesla will start providing an official, easily exportable certificate of repair right in the app. So Tesla's giving owners a tool to prove the health of their vehicle. So if your vehicle undergoes a major battery repair or replacement, Tesla will now give you a digital certificate confirming that. And it's been maybe 1 or 2 years since we've mentioned it on the channel, but one of the biggest limiting factors for the used EV market is consumers being able to verify the health of the battery pack. So this might seem minor, but for Tesla owners looking to sell their vehicles on the used market, this will will actually be really nice. As Joe Tetmeyer shared, asphalt is now being laid down at Giga Texas on the new test track. So rather than Tesla having to ship vehicles off to a remote location for this proving ground type testing, things like handling at high speeds, braking, acceleration, durability, all of that, Tesla will now have that location on site at Giga Texas. Joe also shared another video of what appears to be a mystery car under a cover in the lot at Giga Texas. Frankly, I don't think it's that much of a mystery. My guess is this is the Model Y-L. We've seen the public spottings, we've heard the rumors it's coming to the States, and as we said earlier this week, the release feels imminent. I saw Sawyer first highlight that Tesla has increased the price of the Cybertruck Premium all-wheel drive lease price in the US by 10%. For now, I'm going to refrain from reading too far into this. All I will say is I'm very eager to see Tesla's Cybertruck sales for Q2 and really more for Q3. I'm not expecting a jump to 20,000 a quarter here. I'm just hoping for a directional improvement. And based on anecdotal evidence and deliveries of the lower price trim into production, it feels like things will be trending in a positive direction. Tesla made it official. The Model Y-L has received a 5-star safety rating from ANCAP. Sawyer also shared he found a new trademark application for Tesla's next generation Roadster. It could be the new Roadster logo or badge. The filing says the lines depict speed, propulsion, heat, or wind. And he also shared all 3 official next-gen Tesla Roadster logos and word marks. And something Nick said I believe is worth sharing, the shape of the new Roadster logo looks very similar to Starship V3's QD receptacle panel, which SpaceX uses to deliver power, data, grounding, and auxiliary gases like helium and nitrogen to the booster right up until liftoff, then rapidly disconnects it. I think we've all largely known where the next-gen Roadster is headed with this SpaceX collaboration, and rather than speculate, I'll just wait to hear the actual details that hopefully we'll get here in the next few weeks. Maybe it's just me, but I love the idea of these Tesla lounges at supercharger locations, especially in locations where there's not a ton of commerce or where places close early and so on. And in France, Tesla's opening one of these in partnership with BK World in Lyon with 28 superchargers. And this is the 5th joint location in France. In a first for the Boring Company, they just announced the first residential Music City Loop, serving those living in downtown Nashville. Residents will take an elevator directly to a loop station within the building, board a Tesla, and be at the airport in around 9 minutes, or Lower Broadway in around 2 minutes. And Rob Maurer himself broke his silence sharing this post saying, "Are you getting it yet?" So clearly the Boring Company is building out a new layer of infrastructure that will impact residential real estate, and over time will create an entirely new transportation network that Tesla vehicles will be a primary part of. So it won't happen overnight, but over the long term, where Tesla and the Boring Company are focused on all of these high traffic cities, it really is one of those welcome to the future moments. Early this morning, Elon said this is one of several locations under consideration for what will be the largest and most advanced chip fabrication facility in the world. That responding to S.E. Robinson saying the location will be the county of Grimes, Texas. Estimated capital for the initial phase, $55 billion. Estimated total investment, $119 billion. And to our public knowledge, remember SpaceX is likely to foot a majority of this bill. That's because recently Elon said Tesla would be covering the R&D chip fab at Giga Texas, and at least to start, SpaceX would be covering the cost for the actual Terafab. My guess here is that Grimes, Texas is potentially the front runner for the location to be chosen, but this response from Elon is likely a ploy to have any other locations still in the running increase their offer to make it more attractive for SpaceX to set up shop there. So we'll certainly dive into this more when we have more concrete information, but for now, the site is not final. And as expected, Sawyer said Tesla's ending one-time FSD purchases across Europe on May 21st this year. That includes the UK, Germany, France, Italy, Belgium, Switzerland, Denmark, and others. So falling right in line with Tesla's strategy in North America. Tesla stock closed the day at $398.73, up 2.4%, while the NDX was up 2.08%. The volume was 17% below the average. Another reminder, turn on notifications for this weekend to be notified about the interview that will most likely be uploaded on Sunday. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.